So do you want to talk a little bit more, maybe about Roux? I'm sure a lot of people are interested in Roux. I also noticed here we have, did you see that Cubehead is planning to learn Roux? He posted a comment on Sean's world record.
Oh no, I
Uh,
didn't see it.
what kind of, what's that?
I didn't see it.
Yeah, so what kind of advice would you have maybe for Cubehead or anybody else who wants to learn Roux? Go maybe at different levels. Do you want to start maybe from like when you're first really starting to get into Roux, if you're thinking about maybe going into Roux, what kind of advice you'd have, and then like touch a little bit about like different advice that you'd have for different levels of improvement really quick?
Yeah. So I guess to start out, if you're interested in learning the Roux method, or interested in deciding whether to switch, I'd say just go with the method that you think is more fun. I think both can be very high level at many different events. You could maybe consider whether you want to focus more on 3x3 and one-handed or more on like big cubes. Um, but those kind of specific things aside, I'd say just go with whichever method you believe in, whichever method appeals more to you, and whichever you think you'd find more enjoyment out of practicing. Once you decide to switch to Roux, I think the best advice I can give is to watch a lot of YouTube videos, whether it's example solves or like the how to get why you're not sub 20 with Roux series that I did with Kevin, or just connecting on the Roux Discord. All those things are going to help develop your block building skills. I think that's the main weakness that people have when they switch is kind of having that logic of how to think about putting the first two blocks together in a kind of block building style rather than putting it together in pairs. So yeah, thinking about a ton of example solves. And then also there's Roux trainers where these are linked in the Discord as well, where essentially they give you efficient solutions to various block cases. And that can help you develop your kind of thought process and pattern recognition there. Beyond that, I guess learning algorithms can come at any stage, whether it's two-look CMLL or one-look CMLL. I think a lot of people can pick that up quickly. And then I guess to complete it at the beginner level for LSE, I'd say don't worry so much about EOLR or anything like that until later on. It's good to have an understanding of what it is and how it works, and so you can pick it up intuitively as you go. But I wouldn't worry about trying to learn it in any sort of organized manner until a more advanced stage.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the Roux Discord a couple times. Would it be possible to send a link as well?
Yes, for sure. I'm not too well
In a
versed in
moment, yeah.
Discord, so maybe I could send it to you afterwards and you can add it
Yeah,
to the
no problem.
description or.
Yeah, sure. So everybody who's listening here, whether it's live or the replay, we'll put that in the description once it's over, once the stream's over. So you can go and check out the Roux Discord if you're interested in learning Roux to have all of those resources that Kian mentioned, as well as everybody else who's in there who can help you, right?
Exactly. Yep, I've actually got the link now. So I guess I'll drop it in the chat for now.
Okay, perfect.
There we go.
Okay. So you mentioned beginner. Now
Yeah.
let's already started like for probably my level right now. So I have also been learning Roux. I'm probably like beginner intermediate at this point. So being able to solve the first block relatively efficiently. And then I guess the next thing then would be to try and one look the block, for example, right?
So I think then moving from beginner to intermediate, maybe you've improved your block building, you're starting to see more efficient solutions. I think the next step to really improve that fluidity throughout the solve is to focus on that inspection and try to plan the whole first block. Since that, gives you the mental capacity to start looking at the second block. And once you have a bit more time to think about the second block, then you can be more block buildy in your logic. So it's really a positive feedback loop. I've always been really big on emphasizing the importance of inspection. So once you have the basic concepts down, improving your inspection is always going to give you more time to process and just improve every aspect of your solve, both the turning fluidity and also your efficiency, since you'll have more time to think about things before they happen.
And so generally speaking, would you say maybe once you're at about 15 to 20 seconds, you should definitely be able to predict your first block in inspection? Or what kind of times would you say more or less? Like, I know it's hard to say.
Yeah, I'd say maybe 15 is a good cutoff. At that point, you should definitely be planning your whole first block.
And then the next step in inspection would be like the first edge, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of people have misconceptions that you have to like plan how you're going to solve the first edge for the second block. But the more important thing is to know where it's going to end up on the cube so that you track it as it's moving around, and then you can potentially influence it while you solve the first block. Or you can set it up with other pieces. You could set that edge up with a corner. You could move it around in relation to other pieces. It just gives you a lot more flexibility if you know where that piece is going to end up, to plan more efficient solutions in advance.
And that often comes up by doing like one or two extra moves when doing the first block, right? You do
exactly.
like a couple moves in there to influence something to make the second block a little bit easier.
We'll see a couple examples of that actually once we get to Sean's reconstructions. He does a really good job of that on I think 2 or 3 solves, but it's really usually just one move, a U prime, a U, or an R, and that'll have a drastic impact on the efficiency of the second block.
And then at that point, maybe probably getting around the 10 seconds or so range, and then how about EOLR? So EOLR, for those who are less familiar with it, when you're doing Roux, you're doing the last 6 edges. And when you're doing the last 6 edges, one thing that you can do is to position the right and left edge at the bottom, all the while orienting all of the edges. So I think maybe we should give an example here.
Yeah, I guess I can try to see if I can get something. Okay, so I guess this is not a good example. Wow, drops the cube right away. You can tell I'm rusty. Yeah, this is definitely not a good example. Let's try something different. Okay, yeah, this is a better example. So, I guess maybe pin my cubing camera.
Yep. Should be good.
Okay, perfect. So, let's check the screen. I don't think it's pinned yet in the stream.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag in the screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So essentially, the first step of the last 6 edges phase of the solve is first to orient all 6 edges, and then to place the left and right edges in their respective spots. Now, EOLR is a technique that's a bit more advanced, where you kind of combine phase 1 and phase 2 and do a couple moves to kind of set that up in a more efficient way. So for each orientation case, there's several different ways of solving it. And the whole concept of EOLR is you just pick the better way to do it so that you get an easier next step. So here, I know I can either do MU prime M, or MUM, or M prime U prime M, or M prime UM. So I essentially have 4 options to set up this orientation case, or I could do it from this angle, or I could do it from this angle. But I know that if I do it from this angle, it'll give me this arrow that's special because we have this edge in the back, this edge here. And then at the same time that we solve orientation, both of the edges end up on the bottom. And that makes for a really quick second step of LSE where you can solve them directly.
And so that actually, when do you think would be appropriate to learn EOLR? I know that for me, I've learned all of EOLR, and that I maybe it's a little bit early. I find that EOLR is one of my biggest weaknesses right now, especially recognition and like thinking of the alg. And it seems like in every solve, there's a big pause. Like I get to the last 6 edges, and then I'm okay. I have to take a look and I have to think, and then it takes a while and ends up being much slower to use EOLR than not. When do you think it would be appropriate to learn it? I think maybe earlier might be better because you get more chance to practice it. But what would you think about that?
I think it could be learned at any stage. I know people have learned it. Like Sean didn't learn it until very late, until after he was sub 7. I think I didn't really learn it until I was like sub 8, and I was pushing to sub 7. But I've always recommended that once you get down to like 12 or so seconds is when you want to take it more seriously. And I think what you're describing there is a common pitfall that people fall into, which is treating it as algorithms that require recognition. Whereas I like to see it more as kind of an intuitive sequence where you just have this toolbox of different ways of solving each orientation case. And if you see it fast enough, you just do the right one to set up to EOLR. But if you don't see it fast enough, your hands automatically just do any random one that's the most comfortable. And I guess this ties back to the previous step where having good CMLL knowledge also helps. Since there's only 40 of them, or 42, a lot of Roux solvers develop a kind of intuition of how the CMLL algorithms affect the edges. So a lot of the times when we're just turning during CMLL, we start thinking about what the EOLR case is going to be, and that helps quite a bit. And I guess the last piece of advice I have there is, other than just treating it intuitively, I'd say the way to learn it is go through my video series about it, then go to the EOLR trainer that's linked in the Discord. I think Tao Yu is the one who made that, but essentially it just gives you a different EOLR scramble. You can filter it by which set it's from, and then you just use keyboard arrows to solve it. It's a lot easier on your hands than solving the cube because it scrambles itself and it gives you the optimal solution right after. So just sitting down with that for like a half hour a day can go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Something that I think, what do you think about this though? Like when I've been practicing EOLR, what I try to do is I essentially just do everything. I mean, because obviously I want to use it more for one-handed, so I just do everything with one hand. I scramble with one hand and I solve with one hand. I know a lot of people have problems getting used to moves and moves one-handed. So that's somebody that we had somebody ask about this question: how to get used to M moves. That's kind of what I've been trying to do, like doing M moves as much as possible with one hand. So when doing EOLR, just like scrambling and solving everything with one hand, just doing as much as possible. My hand will hurt, but I know that that's normal, and that means that I'm getting better. What do you think about that and about getting good at M moves one-handed?
Yeah, I think that's a valid approach as well. Again, I think it depends on the individual. A lot of people, I guess, end up with that hand pain from doing all those M moves. And as you said, it's an important kind of soreness to get because then you recover and your fingers get stronger. But at a certain point, your hands are going to die faster than your brain does.
That's true.
So for that, you can, once your hand gives out is when you should turn to the simulation or the trainer online and just use, instead of using your left hand to solve the cube, use your right hand and like the arrow keys, and that'll save your muscles a little bit and kind of train you mentally a lot faster. Especially because you can kind of just close your eyes and spam buttons and not have to look at it just to test how well you know the case. But yeah, in terms of getting good at M moves, having a well set up cube is really important. Typically faster cube, weaker magnets, that helps a lot. On most cubes, I can't really do M moves. I have a very specific preference for it. But yeah, other than that, it just comes with practice and having a cube that's set up well for it.
And that also goes into, I think, a topic I wanted to mention as well about getting good at one-handed specifically using Roux. I know you made a video at some point. The first thing is really getting good at Roux in general, right? Being able to solve efficiently. That's kind of what we've talked about so far. And then once you're fairly good at Roux, that's when really there's a few things that you can start doing to get good at Roux one-handed. So I know we're late already. Want to touch really quickly on maybe Roux one-handed and what you think is important for that?
Sure, yeah. I think I completely forgot about that video, but now that you bring it up, I maybe remember certain things I said in it. Once you're good at Roux two-handed, then to improve at Roux one-handed, there's only really two things. It's really just, or maybe three. So there's turning, so you have to get good at turning, so turning in general, and then M moves is the added challenge. Then you have to get
B moves and such.
B moves and such, yeah, those are a bit of a unique challenge as well. M moves, B moves, those sorts of things. Once you're good at turning, then there's the efficiency aspect of adapting your solutions to first block and second block to be a little bit more finger trick friendly for one-handed. So second block is actually a lot easier one-handed, since with two-handed you have like wrist overturn issues. You can't do that many consecutive R moves before your wrist runs out. But for one-handed, you can do unlimited Rs and you can keep.
Right.
So often second block solutions end up being more efficient one-handed than two-handed and more ergonomic. But for first block, on a lot of times, you'll find people using more R moves, more U moves for one-handed than two-handed. That's just something you pick up. And the last thing is really just adapting your CMLL algorithms. I think there's, out of the 42, maybe there's 10 to 15, maybe 20 that would require relearning or learning one-handed specific algorithms just to make them a better, more efficient and ergonomic to execute. But other than that, it just comes down to practice. Those are like the three main skills, and then it's just rinse and repeat.